Okay, we are good to go. I didn't realise when you said the lights were going up, we weren't going to go dark first. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to be at a conference where people are going to understand my accent for once. So if you're from Scotland, welcome. This is going to be a really interesting discussion, actually. I'm really quite interested to find where Tony's going to take this. But what we're going to be talking about is what impact artificial intelligence can make in the television space. And so I have Tony Emerson here, who is the head of global entertainment for Microsoft. And I've told Tony the first question I want to ask, so he explains to you all, is why does Microsoft have a global entertainment chief? What is it that you do exactly?
Well, one of the things, and hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. I'll be the accent that'll be harder to understand than Stephen's. One of the things that we're trying to do is change the nature of the way people look at Microsoft. And we've often been thought of as, I like to say we don't have to introduce ourselves very often, but we do have to introduce ourselves in terms of what we're doing in the cloud and what we're doing to empower companies to be creative and do exciting things. And in entertainment, to a large degree, that means taking work out of the process and making it faster, easier, more agile, more capable of doing things. So we work with all of the major broadcasters, major content companies, the studios, in their journey as they move a lot of what they do out of premises and old workflows into a cloud, which is a much different way of doing business. And as I said earlier, one of the things that people talk about FANG and how that's changing things, I often tell people, remember, there's no M in FANG. So we're not Facebook, we're not Google, we're not trading on data. Our business model doesn't depend on doing that. We do services for other companies, and that's why entertainment is one of our biggest industries. Okay,
so you're not launching anything there, there's no news to announce?
You know, they tell you never say never. Xbox, in the gaming side, we're always at the edge on and doing exciting new things. But no, we're not, we don't have a movie studio, we don't have a service that's, we don't do a lot of those things, but we do them on behalf of a lot of other companies. Okay. And when we talk about tools and AI, when we talk later, that's really things that we supply to other people to do great things. Mm-hmm.
So the title of our discussion is, can AI make TV better? I suspect the answer you're going to come back with is yes, but...
What a surprise. Huh?
It will be a shock if you say no. I don't think we'll get that. So can AI make TV better, Tony?
So I think it's like any tool set. If you go back and say, did editing online, non-linear editing, make the output of content better? I think most people would agree it did. So AI and machine learning, and we should probably get out of the way, what do we mean by that? Because like cloud, it's one of those most poorly defined, least understood sections. For us, it's using machines to do things that typically people did very labor intensively in the past. So AI with algorithms, machine learning with data models can do all of those things that you could do with people, but it would just take lots of them a long amount of time. Mm-hmm. Or with gigantic data sets, you couldn't really do it before. So the shorter answer is, yes, I think it will make it better because we'll be supplying better tools to the creative people who put the content together.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to talk about what Microsoft's doing in this space and one of the tools that you're currently providing. But what I'm curious about is, do you have any use cases that you would highlight as being how artificial intelligence is really making a difference so far?
Well, let me give you the example of NML Shine Group. Mm-hmm. They have just gone through a very major reboot of Big Brother. Did anyone here know how long Big Brother's been out in the market? It's almost 20 years. Dates me. And what they're trying to do is figure out how can they make it fresher, more interesting, more immediate. Mm-hmm. And what we did with them is we took some of the things we'll talk about later and made it so that their producers the next morning get all of the output from yesterday in the house, all of the transcripts, all of the emotions, all of the facial recognition of who was in which room talking with which people. Sentiment analysis on whether it was positive or negative or neutral or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then they can take all of that content, distribute it out over the cloud to editors who no longer have to be on site. Mm-hmm. They can be in other places, putting things together in a more immediate sense. So the production in Italy that just concluded, I think, a month or two ago, was one of their most successful, some of their biggest ratings, and they attribute, not all of it, needless to say, but they attribute some of it to their ability to do things more quickly and do things that they couldn't do before because they didn't have the time to do them. So that's the answer to a lot of these, is you can now do things that were not possible before only because you didn't have the time.
And creatively then, what is the input that you believe artificial intelligence can give content creators?
So I think it gives them tools to get insights into scenes, into interactions much more quickly than they could before. But it's also a different area, is not so much for creatives, but for people who have large catalogs of content. They can go back and now mine that catalog in ways that they couldn't before. So I'll give you an example of UFA, which is a large production company in Berlin, part of Bertelsmann. They had a back catalog of Verbotene Liebe, which is it's a series that's been running there for 20 odd years. And they were asked if they could deliver that out as a SVOD or a TVOD service. And someone was asking them, well, what's in all of the episodes? And if they were lucky with the ones 15 years ago, they had the name of the episode, the date it was transmitted, maybe not more than that.
Right.
So they were able to create metadata out of it by going and mining it at a cost which was probably a tenth of what they historically would have done, with a couple of partners who worked in them. So now they have metadata, in some cases clips, short clips from it, that they can use to inform people on whether they'd want to see it or not, or what the storyline is, or different areas like that. The most exciting thing for me, though, is that we don't know the way people are going to use it.
Yeah.
We put a lot of these things out there, and then someone will come along. In Malaysia, they're looking at it as a way of, and we'll all view this as censorship, they view it as meeting community standards of removing certain things from programs, either certain words or certain scenes, things that are not appropriate. And previously, the amount of cost for them having to do that kind of content redaction was very, very expensive, because you'd actually have to watch every single minute. Now they still watch most of it, but they get clues as to where to go to find things that they're going to have to remove.
And I mean, the conversation always turns when we talk about artificial intelligence to how is this going to replace jobs, and what is it going to mean for the industry, and how is it going to have to revolutionise in some ways to keep up with things? How do you see that impact?
So I'm not a believer that artificial intelligence or machine learning will be the creative force in writing new stories or doing new genres. It's clear that it can do a lot in terms of removing the drudgery from, say, editing or transcripting. So all of those jobs which before were, watch 3 hours of this and tell me the 2 minutes that I need, it might come down to a person saying, now watch 20 minutes of this. I've already selected the 20 minutes that are probably the best. Tell me the 2 minutes that you need from that. So in that sense, the amount of people needed to do that will go down. But the quote I like is from a guy at MIT who said, yes, it's going to replace a lot of the robotic jobs, but maybe we don't want people to have robotic jobs if they are just that. It's not going to replace, I don't think, this is my opinion, the creative jobs very much. And yet, I think it's going to enable people in many ways to be much more creative. Creative within boundaries, creative within algorithms, and we have to be careful when we create all of those boundaries and algorithms that we're not moving things into a very narrow path and reducing creativity.
Just to make you all aware as well, we are accepting questions over the app if you want to fire any at us. But at the end, I'm going to try and get a couple of minutes as well for you to ask some questions if you want to as well. So we'll open it up at the discussion before we close. To move on, what I'd quite like to do is explore what is Microsoft doing in this space. So is it Video Index or is the tool?
Show you a couple of things that make it, because in this case, the picture is probably worth a lot more than 1,000 words. So these are the basic technologies that are there as part of Video Indexer. Could you just
Yeah.
move that a little bit to the left, and I can see the screen?
Can you see it at all?
Yeah.
Right.
So it does facial recognition, redaction, object detection, content moderation. So it can go through and decide whether a scene is racy, adult, or family friendly. It can tell you what objects all appear within the scene. So if it's a couch, if it's a wall, if it's a car, if it's a dump truck. It can detect faces and match that against a celebrity database of up to like 10,000 we have, but you can add your own facial recognition to it. So typically customers use it and they put in tags on all the faces they know, and then it'll come back and tell them, which means when you've indexed something, you can go back and say, I only want a scene with this person in it, and you can click and it'll take you directly to it. It does OCR within it, so it'll take any signs or any credits that are on there, a lot of different things. And with Video Indexer, what we've done is taken those are all individual technologies that run within our Azure cloud today. And we've stitched them into something that breaks it down into, I think this is last time I checked, something like 28 different functions. And all of those different functions we then run at one time when you analyze a video, which means we can do translation to other languages, we can do scene detection, scene changes, brand detection. So if you want to know everywhere the Edinburgh TV Festival appears within this, it would come back after our recording today and tell you that I just said that and take you exactly to that point rather than having to search for it. And it's that stitching together of everything that gives you a vision into what a video indexer can do. The reality is that most partners and most customers end up using 4 or 5 of those functions. They don't just use the indexer per se, although it's a great way to test it, and I encourage any of you, it's a free service right now for individuals to use, vi.microsoft.com you can go to, and upload your own files and try it out, because there's nothing like seeing what it works like.
Okay. And do you have some examples of how it works?
Let me, so I was very creative. I took the first minute from last year's McTaggart Tech lecture, and maybe you could show the first of the 3 videos.
Well, good evening, everyone. Down the years, I've found myself in some pretty curious situations, but nothing quite like this. Standing before the heart and soul of our industry, the creative forces, producers, directors, owners, managers, editors, employees, the elite, the life force that has even at times rendered what we do the envy of the world. For myself, in the immortal words of my Game of Thrones namesake, I know nothing. But I guess I have experienced a lot. When I was doing the research for the lecture, I was thinking back to what I'd done over the years, and I had to consult Google. I was appalled to discover that other fellow with the same spelling had hogged the first 50 entries where once I was supreme. Winter sure has come for that bastard.
Still is punchline. So we capture now in 9 different languages, so Mandarin, Japanese, Russian, Arabic, all the Romance languages.
Is it doing that in real time, all of the languages?
It can be done in real time.
Right, okay.
The accuracy goes up the time you do 2 swipes through it.
Okay.
And most people don't use it for real time, although Al Jazeera uses it for real time English subtitling for their English. But more interesting to that, I think, is that if you are a non-native speaker of something that's being spoken, you can then look at something that's fairly well translated, I'm not saying perfectly translated, and spend your time thinking about what's being said rather than if it's your second language, trying to spend all your time thinking about what are they really saying, translating it, and then thinking about what they're saying. So that's where its use case is a lot, is for people to use it to get a first run through of something. And then editors will determine, okay, that's worth doing a dubbing for, that's not.
Okay. And I mean, this is practical usage, but when it comes to creativity, have you found examples of where AI could actually be creative or guide creativity? Is that something you believe it could do?
So in terms of creating, I've seen a few examples. IBM Watson's has done some edits of movies to try to create trailers.
Right.
And they're interesting.
Yeah.
And because the trailers have a specific pattern to them, you can do that pretty well. Mm-hmm. Editing, the initial edits that you get off of doing dramas, not so good. Mm-hmm. The edits that you get off of doing sports, actually pretty good, because the action parts of sports programs are fairly easy to predict. Okay. If you're watching football, it's when there's a goal. If you're watching baseball, it's when there's a hit. So those things you can summarize very easily. Drama doesn't work so well because it's hard to tell when someone is saying something very impactful unless you have either an audience reaction, a character reaction, or someone who's underlined it in the script, and then you know.
Any more examples then that we could have a look at?
No, I can show the one in Japanese as well, but that's I think incidental. If you go to the next slide, or actually I guess I can do that. This just shows you that in the you can get insights into this as well. So we get keywords out of it, we can get labels out of it. Mm-hmm. You can look and see what is in there. There's a wall, it's indoor. So if you need to search through scenes, and sometimes editors will use this to find things that they want to go for. It can show you where there was a brand named within something. So for people doing brand research, it's quite quick. Or you can look at sentiment analysis. So in this case, how much of the speech was generally negative, how much was positive. The other area that's being used more and more, interestingly enough, is for redaction. So if you have scenes that have certain actors or people in the public who you don't have rights for, you can have the algorithm go through and facially redact all of those people. Now, there are ways to do that today. It's a fairly time-consuming process and expensive, so it's really reducing the amount of time to do that. Or you can have other things redacted in the scene as well.
Okay. And we've got a couple of questions, actually. Let me check what we've got. One on the efficiency and accuracy around facial recognition software. Is that something that you're using an awful lot in this space?
We are. Facial recognition software has grown tremendously in terms of accuracy, but it's prejudice.
Right.
So it tends to be better for white males than it is for females. It tends to be better for Caucasians than it is for Asians. Things like that we have to work on. And one of the things that we're doing is we're working to make sure that the algorithms that we use to do these are not born of the prejudices of the people who create the algorithms. Yeah. So we create those quite transparently. There's access to them. But facial recognition is one of those areas where there's a controversy about whether and how it should be used. So we do this as a tool for entertainment companies, but needless to say, I think it's used quite extensively in intelligence, in other areas also.
Mm-hmm. We always assume that artificial intelligence will be developed to be a neutral platform, but it just doesn't seem to be the case. And is that because we're passing on our own prejudices then? Is that what you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think that we've come out with a whole business on talking about ethical AI, because if it's not used, if it's used only to verify your existing prejudices more in terms of suggesting what you watch next or something else, then what are we really gaining? Right. A little bit of money and time, I'm sure, but realistically, I think it's an area that we have to work on to be more cognizant of what people want. Mm-hmm.
What else are you guys working on then? So you've given us a very strong example of how AI is being developed for the entertainment industry. But what's to come? Where do you want to take this?
Well, I think the thing that I find is interesting right now is that it used to be that doing a machine learning, deep learning model took a number of data scientists and a tremendous amount of computer time to get to the point of answering simple questions like, is this face a man or a woman? Is this, well, now, because we're publishing most of those algorithms and making them available as services, now people are able to spend more of their time taking it up to a higher level of decisioning, right, or in some cases, actually using the expertise they have in-house to train the model. And you train models with large amounts of data. And so the way you train the model depends on the data that you give it. So if the data that you give it is inherently prejudiced, it will probably come out that way.
Okay. And back to the tool, how many users do you have working with it right now? Just how active
Well, with
is
this
it?
tool, hundreds of thousands,
Right,
because
really?
we published it as an open view. But we have hundreds of companies in the entertainment industry who are using it to do real work. And we've just gone what we call GA, or generally available, in the last couple of months. And at IBC next month, we'll have some additional announcements around things that we're doing. It remains to be seen how people will use it. And I think we're always interested in not using it just for our own purposes. Some of the things we developed on this were for Bing and for other services we have, but really getting other people out there and exercising it.
To open it to the floor, yes, please. Is there a microphone? Sorry, there's a microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, a couple of questions. One, how long is it going to be free? Do you plan to make it free indefinitely? Or?
No, it's not going to be free indefinitely. Today, it's free for personal use, for testing. But having said that, most of the people we're dealing with, it's running something like $12 per hour of video analyzed. It's very inexpensive compared with any kind of work that people are doing to do that otherwise.
Okay. Right, my main question was then advertising. With TV depending a lot on advertising for its revenue, is there any way that AI can come in to make that also more efficient, especially when you've got things like ad blocking being possible and all that? Are you able to help advertisers to also exploit the effectiveness of their campaigns on television?
Yeah, we have a company we work with right now, Uyala, who uses this to decide what ads to insert and in your over-the-top video on demand. And one of the things that they've learned from that is that if you insert ads that people are interested in and you don't insert the same ad the next 3 times, which drives us all nuts, people are more liable not to try to skip ads, and they won't block them as much. So I think if you use it as a tool to be to do things that are relevant to what people want, you're much more likely to get acceptance by it. If you use it just to decide how often can I interrupt someone and not have them switch off, then I don't think it'll be as successful.
Okay. Thank you for that. Please.
To piggyback on what she just asked, are any services tapping into your AI to identify integrations within content, like Nielsen tracking brands that could be, or advertisers that are actually within shows,
So
like product placement?
So we have, as a service, the brand recognition part. And so brand recognition is being used by some of the agencies, which we don't disclose, it's for our partners to disclose, to do that kind of work. And it's interesting that you want to be able to see logos that are in the distant, you want to see them close up. Eventually, I expect you'll be seeing people paying to replace the logos that you're seeing in the close-up as with a different logo.
Can it also identify objects? So
Oh,
vehicles, and if something isn't actually logoed.
Yeah, that's one of the things I showed there. It'll tell you there's a chair in the room, there's a car, there's a truck, there's a wall here. And so you can go through and decide, is this a program with lots of modern-looking Scandinavian furniture? Maybe IKEA would be the one that would be the right advertising.
Can you also repeat the address of this free service?
I'm sorry, I said it wrong.
VI.
vi.microsoft.com. Video indexer.
Was there another hand? Yes, please.
Hello, my name's Julie Craik from Tay Screen and Craik Converge. We work closely with Screen Scotland, the new screen agency in Scotland. My question is, to what extent, I know that games companies, for example, have been using analytics to inform design of games and storylines going forward. Are you also working with, say, directors, scriptwriters and so on to somehow have some mutual informing of storylines from the AI?
So I'd have to tell you no, and it's not for lack of desire. We're putting this out there to try to get people to use it. And so if you have ideas of how people can use it to do that, we'd be very interested in it. But the creative side of it, creating storylines through AI, I think we're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, I'd very much like to contact you by email
Please.
if I may. Thank you. Thank you.
There you go, you've got a fan base already. We must be doing a good job. Thank you for your question. We've got a few from the audience. I'll read out a couple and see what you think. For a show like Big Brother, which has so many compliance issues, isn't it concerning that sensitive, not-for-public footage is potentially hackable?
So people often ask me, how sensitive is it to have things in the cloud versus on-premise? And all I can tell you is a quote from someone at Disney who said, I'm sure that Microsoft spends somewhere between 100 and 1,000 times as much as we do on security. So I'll let you guess where things have been hacked before. We have compliance to content protection associations, to MPAA, all sorts of different things. The fact of the matter is, if you get 3 people to collude, you can hack into almost anything. It's the problem is, once you put it into the cloud, we encrypt it on the way up there, we encrypt in the cloud. So, you know, I would say that is an important thing, but it's a lot less dangerous than where it is today, which is often sitting on USB drives somewhere in a box.
Okay, thank you for that question, it was great. One more, I think I've got 2 minutes, so okay, we'll take a question at the back and then I'll read one more. Sorry, I'm making you run.
Make him run all the way back. He's not a fan.
Hi there, my name's Rodri, I'm from S4C, the Welsh language broadcaster. Are we in danger of inadvertently increasing production costs for content creators in smaller languages, those with the least data to feed machine learning? And what are Microsoft kind of doing to sort of ensure that this is a diverse future in terms of languages that you are using within AI?
So is it primarily increased costs for people releasing things in other languages that's the concern?
Yeah, in smaller languages. So if, let's say, for the time being, the Welsh language isn't available as in terms of being recognised in machine learning, so there's not enough data sets. So I'm sure there are many other languages which are, you know, smaller than large languages. Have you got like a timeline for getting to those smaller ones?
So I confess to you that we do have the problem that you need to have a certain amount of usage before you can invest in doing the language model. So what we've done in that case is that we partnered with companies who will have the cost economics to do it for a smaller audience. And for example, Zoom Media in the Netherlands has used our engine to do Dutch, Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish, languages that weren't on our roadmap in the near term. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There's going to have to be partnerships to make that happen. But we have Tagalog coming on board. You know, we have other languages all the time coming in.
Okay. Last of just enough time before I have to end. So do we really want computer systems picking talent? Can computers be trusted to have good taste?
I'll pass on the second part of the question. Can we trust them to? So computers today are already picking talent. So if you look at Netflix today, the way they decide to reauthorize programs and to spend the billions that they spend is based on the data they get from watching behavior, when people click in, when they stop, when they pause, when they abandon. It's already, they're capturing all of that data to make it happen. Now, will the AI be the one doing that? Probably not. I think the data that you have from millions of users will make that happen.
Okay, we could go on for probably another half an hour, no problem, but I'm told to wrap up. So thank you very much, Tony. That's been fascinating to see it.
Thank you.
And one more time, what was the URL so everyone can have a look at it?
vi.microsoft.com.
Check it out. Thank you very much for coming, everyone.